Diplomat's Archives, Hidden Stories. This is the 23rd story. Continuing from last week, we will once again follow the footsteps of the Irish missionaries in Korea. About 1 hour and 10 minutes by plane from Seoul lies Jeju Island, the largest island in South Korea. After a 40-minute drive from Jeju Airport, we arrived in Gumangli Hallim on Jeju Island, where our destination for today, St. Isidore Farm, is located. Here, we discovered the incredible miracle brought to life by Irish missionaries in Korea. Another hidden story linking Korea and Ireland begins now. The total area of St. Isidore Farm is 4,950,000 square meters, roughly the size of 694 soccer fields. Today, it's covered in sweeping green meadows, but it wasn't always this lush. 70 years ago, this land was nothing but barren wasteland. The man who transformed it into pasture land and built a farm here was Father Patrick McGlinchey of the Missionary Society of St. Columban. In Korea, he became known as Father Impije.
When I first went to Jeju and I was talking to people about Father PJ McGlinchey, they were like, who? And then eventually they were like, Impije. So for a lot of people in Jeju, Impije is he's a bit of a saint.
In April 1953, at just 25 years old, Father McGlinchey arrived in Busan. It was just 3 months before the Korean War came to an end. The following year, he was appointed head priest of Hallim Parish in Jeju, setting foot on the island for the first time. The people of Jeju at the time were living in great hardship. They were suffering from the aftermath of the April 3rd incident of 1948 and the devastation of war. Witnessing this misery, Father McGlinchey began searching for ways to help save the people of Jeju. Our team met someone who knew Father McGlinchey better than most to hear his story in greater depth. His name is Michael Riordan, known in Korea as Iodon. Like Father McGlinchey, he is a priest of the Missionary Society of St. Columban. Today, Father Riordan carries on Father McGlinchey's legacy as chairperson of the Isidore Development Association. The Isidore Development Association was established in 1962 with the goal of promoting self-reliance and welfare among the residents of Jeju. The association generates income from the farm and uses it to operate various welfare facilities for children, youth, and the elderly.
When Father McGlinchey arrived in Korea, he arrived on the mainland before the Korean War was over. He came as a missionary and to set up a new parish. So people originally thought, well, his job will be just to spread the gospel, baptize people, and let them know about Jesus and enter them, bring them into the church. And he did that. But as I said, the other thing is to do what is God's will. And God's will is that we love one another. And Father McGlinchey would often say, I'm preaching love every Sunday, so I should put this love into practice and show it.
Determined to live out God's command to love one another, Father McGlinchey devised various projects to relieve the suffering of Jeju's poor.
he introduced the credit union, the concept of the credit union. As I understand it, a lot of struggling farmers at the time in the 50s were taking their own lives because they were getting into debt and they were struggling with debt and taking the hard way out. And so he thought, well, you know, in Ireland we have this model of kind of shared saving schemes. And he set up credit unions. And so the credit union movement in Korea, especially in Jeju, really owes its history to MPJ.
Father McGlinchey, who established the first credit union in the Jeju area, devised another project to address the region's poverty at a more fundamental level. That project was to introduce and spread pig farming throughout the area.
He basically introduced pig farming to the people of Jeju and taught them how to do it properly. And it kind of kick-started the pork industry in Jeju, and that made a huge difference to people's ability to feed themselves, to farm properly, to run their farms. And so, you know, whenever I have Jeju black pork, I always have a little moment and think, good old MPJ.
To begin, he obtained a pregnant Yorkshire sow from Incheon and brought it to Hallim, Jeju. And that sow became the foundation of a new initiative with local youth, the 4-H Club. The 4-H Club, which began in the US in the early 20th century, is a youth development program aimed at improving rural life. Its name comes from the 4 H's: head, heart, hands, and health. Through the club, Father McGlinchey taught members how to raise pigs and set up a livestock bank, distributing 2 pigs to each household. The condition was simple. Members would raise the pigs based on what they learned from the club with proper feed. Once the pigs reproduced, they would return 2 piglets to the club. This way, Father McGlinchey sought to build economic self-reliance in the community. But the project didn't go as smoothly as planned.
He had got this feed in from America that he could get very cheap to help them to rear their pigs. The pigs were putting on weight over a period. Suddenly they all started losing weight. And after investigating it, he found out that because the people were in debt, someone from the mainland needed good corn to make beer. Asked the farmers to sell and they wouldn't. But the farmers were in debt, and those who loaned them the money said, look, we want our money now, sell that to them or else. So the farmers, because of their poverty, were not able to oppose the moneylenders. So they had to sell this corn to pay off their debt. The result was the pigs didn't do well. When PJ found it wasn't just 1 or 2 farms, it was nearly 100 of them he had set up, and they all ran into the same problem. So he decided he better manage the pigs himself, even though he wasn't an expert.
Father McGlinchey decided to establish a farm himself. Of course, a farm would require funding.
When he went to Jeju first, he didn't have any money, and he had this farm, and he just was trying to build something. So he used to write home to his father every couple of weeks and say, send money for Jeju. And so his father would, in Donegal, in the northwest of Ireland, his father would go around all their friends and family saying, PJ needs money for Korea. And they would do collections in the church and everything. And his father literally would stuff envelopes full of cash and send them by post to Korea. And that helped get Isidore Farm up and running. It helped the training of the farmers. It helped set up the credit unions. It helped all of that. So it just goes to show, even though in those days, you know, it was a big distance, Korea to Donegal, Jeju to Donegal, but they still managed somehow to kind of make those connections.
With the funds he raised, he purchased land here in Kumangli, Hallim, Jeju. Together with about 20 members of the 4-H Club, he cleared the rocky fields and planted pasture grass. And so, in 1961, St. Isidore Farm was born. The following year, the Isidore Development Association was also founded.
And at that time, I think he decided he needed, if he had land and this, he needed to have a formal project or a name separate from the church. And so he set up the Agricultural Development Association, and he called it the Isidore Development Association. And the reason it's called Isidore is, being a Catholic, in the Catholic Church, there are various saints who are patrons, I suppose. The patron saint of farmers is Saint Isidore, a Spanish man who was a labourer, wasn't rich, wasn't wealthy, but helped other people from what he had.
At the farm, Father McGlinchey trained Jeju residents in modern livestock farming, introducing improved breeds and advanced techniques from Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand, and steadily helped the farm grow. He also supported local pig farmers with technology, facilities, and feed, distributing breeding stock and laying the foundation for Jeju's swine industry. To this day, Hallim in Jeju remains a hub of Korean pig farming. By the mid-1960s, St. Isidore Farm had grown to some 13,000 pigs. Even Korea's largest corporations sought advice from the farm, a testament to its remarkable success. But Father McGlinchey's mission to save the people of Jeju did not end there. Our team met another of his longtime companions who shared more stories about Father McGlinchey's life and work.
저는 1979년도부터 맥클린치 신부님 만나가지고 돌아가신 28년도까지 39년 동안 함께 생활하고 함께 근무하면서 살았던 김마테오 현 기독협회 이사입니다. 스님인가 하는 그 처녀가 와가지고 나 부산 공장에 취직 때 갑니다. 이제 인사를 왔는데 어느 날 뭐 어떤 사람이 뭐 이게 항아리를 들고 왔더래. 이게 뭐냐니까 아이고 스님이 유골이라고 그 쇼크를 받은 거예요. 신부님이 이제 60년 70년대 뭐 그냥 흔한 일들이니까.
A 15-year-old girl named Sunim, who attended church, left for Busan to earn money, but returned to Jeju as a lifeless body. This tragic incident deeply shocked Father McGlinchey. He began to think about how Jeju women could find work without having to leave their hometown. That was when he came up with sheep. In Ireland, where he grew up, many families raised sheep. He also remembered his mother knitting when he was young and wondered if knitting could be used to create different products. The concerns that he had have been left behind in the letters that he sent home. In 1959, Father McGlinchey founded a company called Hallim Handweavers, known in Korean as 한림수직. He brought in 35 sheep and raised them himself, shearing their wool, while Irish nuns taught Jeju women how to knit with the wool. Through knitting, they began making sweaters, scarves, and gloves to sell. We were able to meet someone who had worked with Father McGlinchey and the Irish nuns in the early days of Hallim Handweavers.
제주도에서 할 만한 일이라는 것은 농사일, 또 아니면 해녀. 근데 해녀 같은 거는 수영도 해야 되고 헤엄도 치고 자기 집안에 어른이 누가 있었을 때 대물려서 할 수 있는 직업이었지 새로운 사람이 수영 배웠다고 해서 곧 들어갈 수 있는 직업이 아니었어요. 그래서 저는 집안에 해녀가 없으니까 저는 육집으로 기술을 배우러 가게 된 거죠. 한 반년 정도 기술 배우고 서울에서 취직을 했어요. 그런데 8월 추석이 돌아와서 고향에 내려왔죠. 동네 언니가 수녀님이 너 좀 보자고 한다고, 저를 보자 한다고. 그래서 수녀님만을 찾아갔죠. 갔더니 육지 가지 말고 그냥 여기서 이거 해라. 그래서 붙잡혀서 그냥 그때부터 하게 된 거예요.
Having learned knitting from Irish sisters, Kim Myung-nyul later took on the role of product inspector. It is said that unless she said approved, a product could not be released.
미움 많이 샀죠. 좀 까다롭게 검수를 한다고 틀리면 고쳐오라고 그러고 부르시오 하고 이렇게 가르치자는데 왜 이렇게 했냐 하고 이러니까요. 예.
She recalled that knitting required only yarn, so many women in Jeju could work from home. Even women who had to manage housework and childcare and couldn't commute to a workplace were able to work for Hallim Handweavers. All they needed to do was knit products at home. Perhaps because of this system, as many as 1,300 women were working from home during the company's peak in the 1970s and 80s. Hallim Handweavers products were hugely popular at the time. The company even ran a store in a famous Seoul hotel, and its items became beloved as high-end wedding gifts.
그때 당시는 일본도 이거에 없었어요. 일본 분들이 저한테 찾아온 경우도 있었죠. 그래서 제가 좀 가르쳐준 부분도 있고 제주 사람들한테는 이걸 꼭 가지고 싶은 그런 물품이었어요. 왜냐하면 혼수품에도 들어갈 정도였으니까 시어머니한테 사주는 물건이 그거였었고 큰 행사가 있던가 하면 그중에 몇 분이 그걸 입고 와요. 그러면 그 양반은 부잣집 사람인 거예요.
Hallim Handweavers was famous for its advanced knitting techniques. Those who, like Kim Myung-nyul, taught knitting and inspected products at Hallim Handweavers at the time are now referred to as knitting masters.
요 디자인 하는 것 같은 것도 처음에는 수녀님한테 배웠죠. 나중에는 이제 노자리 수녀님이 아예 책을 저한테 주시면서 네가 해 이걸. 그렇게 하다 보니까 나중에는 디자인 같은 것도 제가 하게 되고 이제 그렇게 만들어서 하면 수녀님이 보고 도로테야 굿 이렇게 하시죠. 그 소리 들으려고 더 열심히 한 것 같아요.
For Kim Myung-nyul, Hallim Handweavers was not just a workplace, but a place of special meaning.
저한테는 은인이고 진짜 다니면서 느낀 게 제가 결혼 자금도 모으고 좋은 남편도 만나고 이렇게 하기도 했지만 친정에도 많은 도움이 되고 그랬던 것 같아요. 동생들 공부하는데도 저는 공부 많이 못했지만 동생들은 그나마 다 대학까지 했거든요. 네, 그래서 도움이 된 걸로 다 생각이 해요.
He arrived first, his idea was with dealing with people was that he would not just hand them out money or help them when they were in need, but help them after that to become independent and to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. Instead of giving someone a fish, you teach them how to fish. Well, if you look at that very broadly, Father McGlinchey tried, okay, when they're stuck and need help, to help them. But after that, to say, well, how can I help them now to become independent of me, to live by themselves, and become financially independent? And so that was his motive in everything he did.
As time passed, new synthetic fibers were developed, and the flood of cheap wool from China made competition impossible. In 2005, Hallim Handweavers closed its doors. And yet, many people never forgot the Hallim Handweavers brand, remembering it in their hearts. And in 2021, the Hallim Handweavers brand was reborn. The person who brought it back to life was none other than Ko Seon-young, CEO of Jeju Sanghae. Jeju Sanghae is a Jeju-based content curation company that publishes magazines, produces local content, develops spaces, and runs select shops. In 2021, it revived the trademarks for Hallim Handweavers along with St. Isidore Farm and began producing new knitted goods.
우연히 한림수직을 알게 되었는데 제주에 이 지역의 이야기가 굉장히 이렇게 폭넓고 아주 깊게 남아있는 이런 의류 브랜드가 지역에 있었다라는 거 50년 동안 존재했거든요, 거의. 그런 것을 발견한 것 자체가 되게 큰 기쁨이었던 것 같아요. 이 브랜드를 지금 시대에 맞춰서 그 가치를 담은 채로 잘 만들어서 브랜드를 재생하면 그것 또한 사실 로컬 콘텐츠에 굉장히 좀 의미가 있겠다라고 생각을 하였고 많은 분들이 도와주셔서 2021년도에 재생을 하게 되었습니다.
The revived Hallim Handweavers is not only about selling products, but also about preserving and sharing its story.
한림수직에서 모여서 2박 3일, 3박 4일 뜨개질만 중심으로 하는 이런 캠프 이런 것도 운영을 하거든요. 그럼 도쿄에서도 오시고 막 그러세요. 그래서 좀 이 뜨개질을 통해서 실리 갖는 어떤 의미, 그러니까 세대를 잇기도 하고 사람들을 좀 잇기도 하고 그리고 저희가 만드는 건 기본적으로 따뜻한 어떤 따뜻한 옷 이런 거이다 보니까 조금 더 내가 입은 옷을 가지고 더 많은 이야기를 할 수 있는 그렇게 그런 사람들이 더 많아졌으면 좋겠다라는 생각이 들고 그리고 한림수직이 예전에 그랬던 것처럼 그 브랜드가 가진 이런 의미나 가치 이런 것들이 더 많은 사람들에게 알려지는 게 저희의 목표이기도 합니다.
What Father McGlinchey accomplished here on Jeju did not end there. He also built hospitals and hospices for the sick and dying, a nursing home for the elderly, kindergartens for children and parents, and even a rehabilitation center to support at-risk youth.
우리 시부님이 올 마스터 플랜을 만들어 놓고 사업을 하는 분이 아니에요. 양농 사업도 마찬가지였는데 양농 사업할 때 어떤 할머니가 공항에서 그냥 버려져 가지고 알아보니까 자식하고 어디 가버렸다. 결과적으로 버리고 갔다. 이제 이 얘기를 듣고 야 이거 앞으로 참 이게 큰 문제구나. 그래서 양론을 세 사람 네 사람 데리고 시작을 했어요. 그때 가장 필요한 것이 무엇인가를 그것을 현실 안에서 직면했을 때 그것을 실천하신 분이거든.
And all of these places were open to everyone, regardless of religion.
Giving help it wasn't conditional on you coming to church or coming to mass or anything like that. He didn't put one conditional on the other. The two things went together, but you didn't have to become a Catholic to get help or to get employment. And to this day, we don't, even in the nursing home or the hospice or the feed mill or the farm, you don't have to be a Catholic. We don't even ask your religion if you're going to come to work. And remember helping people coming into the hospice, free hospice, being a Catholic isn't like someone says, you have to be a Catholic. You don't.
Father McGlinchey passed away in April 2018 here in Jeju. His grave lies on a small hill overlooking St. Isidore Farm. It has been 7 years since his death, but his residence has been preserved just as it was. Here, we could encounter traces of the life he lived in Jeju.
그 한림의 상인들이 이시돌 목장 그 월급단을 기다린다고. 왜냐하면 장부에다가 이시돌 목장 누구 뭐 어느 근무하는 누구 해서 외상이에요. 외상. 그러면 외상값 받고 다시 또 물건 팔아야 되니까 봉급날을 기다릴 수밖에 없죠. 그 한림읍이 이시돌 목장의 봉급날에 따라서 이게 이 움직이는 뭐 그런 정도였죠. 불굴의 사나이, 의지를 똥돌 뭉친 사나이. 나는 그렇게 표현하고 싶어요. 불굴이에요, 불굴. 그 양반은 안 된 일입니다를 제일 싫어해. 그 양반에게는 안 되는 게 없어요. 바로 그런 분이다.
Father Michael Riordan now serves as chairperson of Isidore Development Association as Father McGlinchey's successor. In 1978, then a veterinarian, he came to St. Isidore Farm to volunteer. He worked here as a veterinarian for 2.5 years before returning to Ireland. Later, he became a priest and returned to Korea in 1986.
It wasn't to bring some foreign faith that I had from Ireland and bring and share it with the Korean people. It was more because while I was here, I became more aware of the value of my own faith. And bit by bit, I began to meet this person, Jesus, in a new way. And I suppose part of me wanted to introduce other people to a different way of meeting him. Not just a formal way, but to meet him somehow as a friend or somebody close. So that interested me. Now, I was fairly happy here in Jeju. So I thought of various ways of staying. How could I come back? Eventually, I decided maybe the idea of becoming a missionary came to my mind.
Our team toured various parts of the farm with Father Riordan. And here, we were able to see the dairy cows raised at St. Isidore Farm.
이게 소 보면은 아주 날씬해요. 왜냐면은 자기 모든 에너지 우유 안으로 들어가요. 다른 소 보면 이거 건강하지 않다. 이거 아니라 이 소 우유만 하기 위해서 하는 거야.
St. Isidore Farm no longer raises pigs. Instead, it now raises beef cattle, dairy cows, and racehorses, creating revenue through them. Its dairy products, milk, cheese, and more are now its main products. Generating revenue at St. Isidore Farm is vital. Those profits fund the association's other facilities.
여기 젊은이들 특별히 아이들 청소년 교육 시설입니다. 일반 인성 교육을 하게 됩니다. 아마 제주도 모든 아이들 아마 여기 한 번이나 몇 번 왔다 갔다 했을 텐데 호스피스 아니면 복지병원이라고 사람들 거기 무료 돌아가시기 전에 시간 누구 모시고 싶으면 여기 와서 모시고 여기 요양원 앞 모습이에요. 오른쪽에.
As he took us around, he shared many stories. And through them, we could truly feel his deep affection for the farm.
엄청 크네요.
이제 한 달 한 번씩 꼭 해야 하고 그다음에 교회는 행사할 때 하고 이 아기는 성당 지붕이죠. 여기 옆으로. 그다음에 위에서 찍으면은 아일랜드 켈틱 십자가의 모양 나옵니다. 말 이쪽으로 가보죠.
And since last year, in partnership with the Korea Racing Authority, St. Isidore Farm has also been running a program to provide retired racehorses with a place of rest.
맨날 은퇴해가지고 락사 팔아든지 락사 시키든지는 고생했으니까 이제 좀 쉴 수 있게끔 하자. 우리 말 입장을 생각하니까 또 넓을수록 말한테 좋아. 그래서 소태에 이 말 보러 오는 사람 기분 나빠. 여기 왔다가 말 저쪽 멀리 있을 수 있어요.
Horses relaxing in the open grassy meadows. This place also draws many visitors who come to meet the horses. The Isidore Development Association celebrates its 63rd year this year. Looking ahead, Father Riordan is pondering different ways to shape its future.
One of the huge problems is the environment is being fecked, basically. And some of the things we do are not good for the environment, like having cattle is not a great idea. So we try to minimize, that's why we have our milk is organic. We try to be as healthy as we can with that. One of the things that I try to do is, lots of people come here looking to buy land and they'll pay big money for some of the land we have, is if I can, not sell the land, to keep the land as nature. And in the future, like we also think of doing something. We have a retreat house and we do various education stuff there. I, myself and the farm manager, would love to do something in the environment. Exactly what I don't know. I mean, everybody know, including myself, that our lifestyle is affecting the environment and that we're destroying the environment. And we all know it, but we don't do much about it. We don't change our lifestyle. We don't. So to have some sort of a place or program where people could feel close to nature, like the farm manager will be given out, we're not just going to have what they call a cheam 목장, a farm that gives experience where you feed a carrot to a horse and think, oh, I've been great. But somehow to learn about animals and nature and to see ourselves as part of that. And maybe that way people might change. So that would be one of the things I'd like to work on.
This year marks 72 years since Father McGlinchey arrived in Korea and 47 years since Father Riordan first set foot here. Time has passed. Much has changed. But the traces and spirit left behind by the two priests and their companions still live on in this place.
이곳이 어떤 그 사제가 무슨 정신으로 이걸 했고 그런 것들을 느끼면서 그것들이 잘 유지되면서 할 수 있는 그런 업체가 됐으면 하는 생각이죠.
Over the past 2 weeks, we have traced the footsteps of Irish missionaries who came to Korea in its time of hardship and extended a helping hand.
We, in the diplomatic service in Ireland, we sometimes joke that the priests and nuns who travelled around the world were like our pathfinders. You know, they established the Irish presence long before the government had even heard of countries. Those relations often start with the kind of people-to-people links. And so, if you think about it, Father PJ in Jeju asking his father to go around the parish asking for money for Korea was arguably the beginning of those links. You know, really they established our presence. They built awareness of Korea in the minds of Irish people long before the government had an Instagram account, you know. So when it came to the Irish government then thinking about establishing relations with countries, the missionaries were there as our stepping stone almost.
Following their footsteps, we realized something. They all showed love through action, not words, and that the starting point of great change was the courage to put an idea into practice. And the fruits of those first seeds are still growing today.